Sup lads, it's your boy, Bandana-Boi, and the first game of the World Cup just ended. Mexico ended up beating South Africa 2-0 in what was complete domination. South Africa didn't look like they belonged on that field. No disrespect to them. But Mexico, they're playing in an area that they're accustomed to. I think it was in Mexico City, if I'm not mistaken. And they were playing really, really well. They won 2-0. Both teams got red cards, and I'll touch upon that briefly. But during the first 10 minutes, actually, um, the Mexican player, I don't know if his name is Julian or Julian, but I'm gonna say Julian just so I don't, mispronounce it because I'm not Mexican myself, so I know the pronunciation. But Julian Quinones, and what an absolute strike! One thing I loved about the Mexican play was they were diving for all the balls. They wanted it. They wanted to win. They wanted to drive. They wanted to take every interception that they could. And the person who assisted them, Eric Lira, he literally put his body on the line, diving to the ground just so that his teammate could cut inside, take the ball, and what an absolute strike, not making the keeper from almost outside the box. Fair play to Julian. It was an absolute strike. And South Africa, the defenders were too complacent with their passes. In their own third, when the Mexicans were attacking, pause, that sounds insane. When the Mexican players were attacking, um, the South African defenders, they were almost trying to dribble the Mexican players, which I don't get what the entire point was. They lost the ball so many times, and I do think that is what led to that's what led to the first goal, and it even led to many counter-attacking opportunities in the favor of the Mexican players, and they weren't able to convert all their chances, but they had so many dangerous chances. The fact that the game ended 2-0 is kind of surprising to me. I did expect them to win maybe 3-4-0 with the amount of chances they were creating. Because South Africa, the first time I saw a shot from them, which was inside the box, was when it was already in the 90th minute. At that point, it's way too late to make a change. And now, going to the refereeing, I was actually going to compliment the refereeing before this game ended. Maybe around the 70th minute, I was like, we always diss referees for their bad calls, and we always say that the referees are really bad. And this game, for the most part, I felt like the refereeing was very fair. The first red card, which was for Mexico, which landed them it didn't land them a penalty, but it landed them a free kick just outside the box. Sadly, they weren't able to convert it, but that was a very justified red card. The Mexican defender, Yaya Sithole, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly again, um, he just took the last man that was attacking, and he was behind him, so it was completely justified. And he was lucky enough that it was just outside the box that it wasn't a penalty. However, the second red card, which was given to Thembas one, was absolutely diabolic. It was not right. I get because he did hit him in the face, okay? And it was definitely worthy of a foul and a yellow card, in my opinion. But you gotta understand, at this point, Raul Jimenez had scored the second goal already. Absolutely beautiful cross from Roberto Alvarado. Like, the link up between the Mexican players was just insane. They look like they're ready. They look like they're firing on all cylinders for this World Cup, and I'm really excited to see what they're gonna do next. But the second red card was just not right. I get that he didn't even have the ball, and it didn't even look like the player wanted to hit him on purpose. Of course, yes, he did foul him and he did initiate physical contact, but wasn't anything dangerous enough for you to go, oh, he was trying to harm the player physically. Where at that point they're already 2-0 down, and they're already one man down as well. So they're already fighting just to survive and not get humiliated in the opening game of the World Cup. And therefore he just kicks them while they're down. And he gives them another red card, which I felt was extremely harsh. Of course, maybe if you look at it in a certain lens, you could say that okay, it was a harsh foul, but still, you'd give it a yellow. A red just feels a bit too harsh. I feel now for the South African team where one of your main center backs, I think, or fullbacks, is basically out. You already have two players missing from your starting 11 out before you even make it to the second stage, and you didn't even pick up any points in the first game. It's looking really, really tough for the South African team, and I really wish them the best. And then there was also a red card in the 92nd minute for one of the Mexican center backs as well. I don't get why he fouled him. Like, I think his name is Cesar Montes, where the South African player was basically through on goal. But up until that point, they didn't really have any great chances, and they weren't really scoring many goals. You gotta understand, at that point, as a player, you gotta make the decision. Am I gonna tackle him and give my team a red card while we're 2-0 up and it's injury time of the second half? That just doesn't seem like it's a justifiable sacrifice. Because your team is gonna need you if you're the starting center back. And doing it at the very last minute of the second half feels a little absurd. You can't be doing that. You gotta think a little smarter. And I think the red card was justified because though it might seem that there were other defenders from the Mexican team on the other side, he was still the last man standing, the South African striker. And if he had gone through, he would have had a shot on goal, most likely. So it was a justifiable red card, but as a defender, you can't. I don't think it's the right decision in that moment to just tackle him. Let him take the shot on goal. I feel like you gotta take that gamble. Where even if he scores, the worst thing that happened is that you no longer have a clean sheet. And most likely Mexico are doing well, so they won't need the goal difference to make it to the second round, or the knockouts. So it was a bit harsh, but the Mexican team really played really, really well. They were structured in such a nice way, the chemistry is there, and there were so many long passes from the South African side that just went long. Like they weren't weighted correctly, and they would just leave the field before they even reach any player. So that was kind of tough to watch, and I really wish that they can do better. Currently, I'm checking the rankings actually. Mexico are 14th and South Africa are 60th. So there is a very big gap in skill quality. South Africa is probably on the lower end of the rankings, at least in regards to FIFA. And you just wish they can make at least another magic moment like in the 2010 World Cup where they hosted it actually, and a goal like that, Shabalala, that was absolutely iconic. And you know, at the end of the day, I just hope the vibes for this World Cup are just as good as the last one. And that's all I gotta say, lads. Thank you for your time, and